reactive calls, when somebody calls 911 or calls non-emergency dispatch and asks for a deputy to come, right? That to me is more of a reactive call. It's usually a crime's already occurred and they're asking us to come, or a crime's currently occurring and they're asking us to come. Where our proactive calls are self-initiated calls, right? Well, about every one reactive call, we're doing about 5 proactive calls to it.
Chief Hessing, how are you?
I'm good.
Good. Thank you for coming in, sir.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So you are the chief of police for Star. You've been chief for 3 years. Star is doing some really cool things. Star itself is growing big time. And I mean, obvious reasons. I actually went to the Star Cafe the other day with my wife and boys. Went to meet a friend, and I love the Star Cafe. Like it's fantastic. But I walked in, I was like, oh my God, like this place is blowing up. So obviously that's why, like, Star's a great place to live. Population is growing, a lot of people from, out of state, and some, obviously relocating within. But I have to imagine that's a little tricky from a policing standpoint.
Yes, it is. The amount of growth, and we've last 2 years in a row, we've been about 16% growth, which if you compare to the other cities around us, it's, I mean, you had Eagle, I think was right around 4%, CUNA is 9%. So we're seeing tons of growth in Star. Now 2016, I started being a patrol deputy out in Star. And at that time, we had about 7,000 people. Well, today we have a little over 20,000, about 20,360 people in Star.
Wait, back up. 2016, so 8 years ago, you had 7,000 people, and now you have over 20.
Yes.
God, that's a big growth.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, and it's not slowing down. I mean, we're still getting quite a few building permits coming through. I mean, it's still, and I'm one of those people relocated. I was in Meridian, Northwest Meridian, and then in 2022, we built a house in Star and moved out to Star.
Well, at least you're part of the problem.
Yes, we are.
That's awesome. So you move out there. Now you've been chief for 3 years. So like, what was your path from patrol deputy all the way up to chief of police?
So let me start at the beginning of my career. So the beginning of my career, I grew up here in Boise, actually south of Boise. My parents had a 40-acre farm out there that I grew up on, went to Bora High School, graduated from there. Well, in 2008, I was going to school at Boise State University, getting a criminal justice degree, trying to figure out what exactly I wanted to do in law enforcement. And because at the time I was actually selling real estate in 2008, that's a bad career to be in.
It's a bad one. That's a rough time.
So I ended up actually applying for Ada County Sheriff's Office and Elko Police Department in Nevada. So Elko Police Department picked me up first. So I moved down there. My wife was funny because she's like, well, where's Elko? And it was only, the good thing about Elko is only about 3.5, 4 hours away from home, which was Boise. But we moved down there. I spent about 7 years down there, and then I came up as a lateral. Ada County hired me on, and then I challenged post, got my post certificate, and then within about 3 months of being here in Ada County, they assigned me to the city of Star. So I came up in March of 2016, and by June of 2016, I was in Star underneath Chief Vogt. So, so as I started in Star, we actually, when we moved back up, we really wanted to live in Star, but we couldn't find a home in Star. So we bought a home in Meridian and lived there until we built this house in 2022. But we, as a patrol deputy, I grew to love the community. I grew to love right at that time, again, we had about 7,000 approximately people there in Star. Loved going to Star Cafe. The people just treated us really well. It was night and day difference. I loved Elko Police Department treated me really well, and the people down there's good people.
Yeah, sure.
But the difference was here, when I came to Star, people waved. It was a 50-50 chance if I was actually going to be able to buy my own food. Random people just buy your food for you. And when you're in full uniform as law enforcement, just very, very supportive.
Right.
And I loved the feeling of Star. And so I told my wife, we really need to move there. I did patrol for about 2 years, and then I actually went and tested to become a detective for Ada County Sheriff's Office. And I was got selected to be in the Major Crimes Division at the Ada County Sheriff's Office, which deals all felony person crimes is what we're looking at. My prior history with investigations had a lot to do with child sex crime cases. So I had a lot of experience in that. And so they, Ada County recognized that, and I started working a lot of those cases, plus other felony domestics and those type of things that I helped out with. So I was a detective for about, I think about a year and a half. And then I was looking at promoting to sergeant. Talked to my current sergeant. He thought it was a great idea. I talked to a few other people, and I ended up putting my name in to test. Ended up testing, and then right at the beginning of, I believe it was 2020, January of 2020, I actually became a patrol sergeant, and I loved being a patrol sergeant. I was assigned to South County. I had 5-6 deputies that worked with me. Had a great team. Nice thing about a patrol sergeant is you're with that team, you get to know them really well. You get to see the calls that are coming out. You select the calls you want to go to support and back up the deputies that are with you. And I was doing that for about a year and a half. And sure enough, when Sheriff Bartlett at the time, when he resigned in May of 2020, well then we had to select a new sheriff to take over, Sheriff Matt Clifford. They ended up going through the process to get him elected to that spot essentially.
Sure.
And they had to run up the special election and so forth. But anyways, at the time, it kind of shook up the leadership a little bit, the command staff of the Ada County Sheriff's Office. And I remember getting called to sit down and talk with, at the time, Captain Jensen. He's the Police Service Bureau captain, and Chief Vogt, who was a star chief. And they wanted to take Chief Vogt and put him over into another leadership position. And they needed somebody to fill the Chief of Star spot. So I sat down, and when they started talking to me about it, it was something that, sometime in my career, I wanted to maybe step into that role, but not as soon. I was really enjoying being a patrol sergeant. But as I looked at it and they talked to me and I said, you know what, I think it is time for me to come out there and I'll do the best I can. I'll work with the community. I loved the STAR community. Again, I was wanting to get back out there anyways. And so sure enough, in August of 2021, I ended up coming out, meeting with the mayor, Trevor Chadwick, great mayor. Ended up talking with him. Both the mayor and Sheriff Matt Clifford ended up speaking, talking to each other, and they ended up appointing me as the chief of police in August of 2024. So, I'm sorry, August of 2021. So that's kind of how I got into the role of being chief of police at STAR.
Look at you. Look, MTU Studios is the proud producer for the Ada County Sheriff Podcast, the Idaho Wildlife Federation Podcast, the State Representative Ted Hill Podcast, the Idaho State PTA Podcast, and many more. If you or your organization is thinking about starting a podcast, MTU Studios would love to help. Just check out mtustudios.com. That's you. And just real quickly, for people that don't know, so STAR has a police department, but it's contract department, right? So the Ada County Sheriff is the one that actually trains and, furnishes with vehicles and all things. And then STAR pays back the Ada County Sheriff. So they do all the training. That's why Matt Clifford would be involved in choosing or, selecting a chief of police for STAR.
That's correct. So the Ada County Sheriff's Office they have 3 contract cities. They have the city of STAR, city of Eagle, and city of Kuna. So the sheriff does a great job working with all the mayors to find out who that person that the mayor wants, and also that Sheriff Clifford would support as well. So there's a lot of benefits to the contract, and I spend quite a bit of time explaining to people because people don't understand how that contract policing works. Right. But there's huge benefits to it, not only intelligence-wise of finding out different crimes that are going throughout Ada County. Because I'm down in Ada County at least twice a week at big meetings talking about what's going on in Ada County, which lets me know what we need to be careful of and protect the city of STAR and the community members out there. But and then the only downfall really for the chief is he's got 2 bosses. He's got the mayor as a boss, and he's got the Sheriff Clifford as a boss. So, but the good thing is both those guys do a great job. They work well together, and they're wonderful to work for. So. Overall, the contract policing is a huge benefit to the community when it comes to how much it costs to have policing out there, and also intelligence-wise. And then me, as the chief of police, when I'm selecting deputies to come out and work patrol or detectives or sergeants, I get to select from the 196, 200 deputies that are patrol certified or police certified to be out there working. I get to kind of select through them of, okay, who do we want? Who would fit well in STAR? Where other chiefs, if we weren't a contract, you do the oral board, you do the testing process. Right. Well, you only know this person for maybe a couple hours, and then you're making a decision. Do we hire him or not? I mean, you do a whole background and do that kind of thing.
Yeah, sure.
But you don't know really truly a person until you work with them for a year or two.
Right.
And so it's actually a huge benefit for me in selecting, okay, who would fit really well out in STAR and be good for the community and build those relationships that are so very important for the community. So again, I love the contracts are amazing to me. Me living in STAR, I love the idea of the contracts, me paying taxes in STAR. There's, again, a huge benefit and huge savings in taxes with having the police contracts that the sheriff does.
Right. I had a great conversation with Sheriff Clifford about a year ago, almost exactly, where he described all of the benefits and the nature of the contract policing, and even things like, he's like, listen, somebody gets T-boned, right? Like one of the patrol guys gets T-boned, the car's destroyed. It's like, the sheriff takes care of that car. They just deliver another car for the patrol right away. And they're like, all right, we'll deal with this one later. Things of that nature. There's this huge maintenance and just kind of you're part of this larger machine that can do things at scale and distribute cost savings down to the actual contract police departments, which is cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. So like the city of STAR, part of the contract is they pay per month, or they pay a yearly contract, but they pay per month for a certain amount of vehicles.
Right.
And right now we have 5 patrol vehicles out there. Well, if one of those patrol vehicles ends up breaking down or gets T-boned, the sheriff ends up sending a spare. We have several spares that are down at the main hub there at Barrister, the sheriff's office. Right. Sends it right out while the other one's being fixed, and that's a benefit to the city, because the city doesn't have to have 2-3 extra cars for spares, just in case they need maintenance or whatever it might be. So
right. It's essentially like a vehicle share, or anyway. Yeah, yep. It's good times. Now, something interesting since you've become chief of police, people do talk about that the recorded crime that's happening in STAR is actually increasing. Now, initially, for people that just take that stat on face value, they're like, well, that's kind of a stick in the eye for, Chief Hessing, but that's not actually it is true that recorded crimes are increasing, but it has a very specific cause. Talk to me about that.
Yes. So when I first came out there, the mayor and I sat down and we made 3 different goals, because in the comprehensive plan of the city of STAR, there wasn't much in there for police services for STAR Police Department. So we sat down and we came up with 3 goals. One of those goals was to try to keep 18 crimes per 1,000 or under, right? Which is the lowest crime rate really in any city that's around us. Well, we fight for that every day, and that's part of the reason why we're trying to do 1 officer per 1,000 citizens of STAR. And he's done, and the mayor and the city council have done a great job on trying to keep up with that, especially with the growth. It's been extremely hard, but they've done a great job in trying to keep up with that. But when we talk about crime in STAR, so one thing we have, and the mayor, you'll hear the mayor talk about it, and so will I, that we have a very proactive policing model. We believe, and we love living in the state of Idaho, because we're still encouraged to be proactive, go out there and find the bad guys and keep the community safe so your kids can ride their bikes down the road, right? I mean, my kid, he's riding around all of STAR, and I don't worry about it, right? And I want to keep it that way. So we're very proactive. So if you see the proactive numbers, we've gone almost a 50% increase in being proactive just in the last year. And so we're out there making traffic stops. We're talking to the people at 2:00 in the morning. They're walking around. And again, there's a fine balance between being overbearing and doing your job. And one thing I always encourage and I look for in deputies that work in the city of STAR, I want the deputy that's going to build relationships and to go out and he's just going to talk to you as a normal person. He's not out there. He's just trying to get to know the community. And so when we see somebody walk around 2:30 in the morning, we're getting out and talking to that person. Well, as you can imagine, the more proactive we are making traffic stops and stopping people and getting out and about, we're going to pull more drugs off the street. So if you look at, there's 3 different categories in crimes that we watch for, right? There's person crimes, property crimes, and society crimes. Person crimes has to do with anything that's a felony, that's from person to person. Well, misdemeanors too. But our detectives deal with the felony side of it. But person crimes are any crimes that involve people to people. Property crimes, anything that, your car burglaries, your vandalism, those type of things. Then society crimes, a lot of those are drug charges. Now they can be also gun charges, different things like that. But your society crimes are mostly drug charges. Well, last year, when we went to the budget and talked to the mayor and the city council, we actually formed a brand new, we call it the STAR POP team, and it's a problem-oriented police team. That's what the POP stands for. So
very nice, very nice.
Yes, yeah. So the problem-oriented police team, and it's the first team that is purely just proactive. So they work a schedule that they decide when the work is. They go out either in the evenings or graveyard or during the day, and all they're looking for is any type of crime, right? And so 70%, I'd say, is traffic enforcement. The other parts of, if we have a troubled like a problem house that keeps throwing parties, or we think there's drugs there, they'll start focusing on that. They'll go out and get warrants, those type of things. Well, that team does a great job in doing traffic enforcement. We have a lot of traffic come through the city of Star. I mean, you look at Highway 44, and I think the last numbers was almost 20,000 people a day driving down Highway 44 through the city of Star. And 70% of that's coming outside the Canyon County side of it, right? So they're coming into Ada County, they're to go to work or wherever they might be doing. Well, as we're making these traffic stops, we're pulling drugs out of these cars. Well, those are drug charges that the city of Star is getting, right? Which is increasing our society crimes. So just an idea, we went from in 2022, and I don't have 24 numbers because we're still in the year of 24, but in 2022, we had 67 society crimes, right? Well, in 2023, we had 134 society crimes. So almost exactly double of what it was the year before. So yeah, so if you look at that, and our crimes per thousand is now, according to this, 19.3, I think is what the last number was. So we're above what our goal was. And that worried me as a chief. As I'm looking at these numbers, I thought, man, what's going on? But then you look at our person crimes, our person crimes, which to me, whenever you go visit a city or move to a city, you're looking at how violent is that city, right? And so if you look at our person crimes from 2022 to 2023, it dropped about 27%. So what I'm seeing is that the more proactive we are, and it's not just the problem-oriented police team, but our patrol teams out there are doing phenomenal. So we have 10 patrol deputies that work the city of Star, and then we have 2 patrol sergeants that help them and supervise them. Well, they're doing a great job being proactive too. But we do, I call it reactive calls. When somebody calls 911 or calls non-emergency dispatch and asks for a deputy to come, right? That to me is more of a reactive call. It's usually a crime's already occurred and they're asking us to come, or a crime's currently occurring and they're asking us to come. Where our proactive calls are self-initiated calls, right? Well, about every 1 reactive call, we're doing about 5 proactive calls to it. So if you look at just in the month of June, we had 1,900, and I think it was right around 1,970 calls for service, and 1,600 of those calls were self-initiated calls. So what we're seeing with the I'm sorry to interrupt, but in the month of June,
so you effectively had 300 calls for service that were person initiated, which is, hey, please come and help. I've either been robbed or something, right?
Yep.
So you got about 10 per day. But the flip side of that is that you had 1,600 in the same month that were the officers going out and doing their thing. So about 53 per day they were going out. So 10 were the citizens of Star called, and then 53 per day where the officers are being proactive, pulling people over, initiating, conversations and connections with citizens.
Correct. Yep.
Wow.
And what we're seeing, that's having a direct effect to, I think we're getting in front of any of the violent crimes that might occur with people bringing drugs, doing drug deals in the city of Star, those type of things. That's where a lot of the violent crimes, and you look at, Boise Police Department, and we're doing really well over there. But you look at that, and that's where some of these, bad fights, potential shootings, those type of things. So we're trying to get in front of that and stopping that from coming. And what's unique is you take the month of June, again, this is, and I talk at city council once a month, and I present a report once a month to the city council and to the city of what Star Police Department is doing. And those reports, you can go on the City of Star website, you can pull up those reports, you can read through them and see and kind of see the crime trends, those type of things. But what we're seeing is that, like month of June, we had a total of 8 drug crimes that occurred in the month of June. All of them had to do with marijuana. And even though I want, and I love the state of Idaho that they still, you know,
Yeah, right.
yep, marijuana is still illegal, and we still enforce that law. We still arrest people for marijuana. And some people are pretty surprised. Well, it's just marijuana. Well, yeah, it's still illegal. We're going to take you to jail, right? But what we're seeing is there was no methamphetamine that came off the streets there in Star, no cocaine, nothing like that had happened in the month of June. And I like seeing that. And what we hear is that people are saying, don't go through the city of Star having drugs in your car because you will get pulled over and they will arrest you. And we want that, right? The whole state of Idaho, we want people to realize it's bad to do any type of drug business in Idaho. We don't want them here, right? So,
man, okay. So bottom line is, as you've become more proactive, the number of actual crimes that you guys are charging people for has gone up. But one, it's because you're being proactive. So you could stop this and make you, Chief Hessing, look fantastic. You're like, hey, I know how to drop the crime here. We're just not going to pull anyone over. Like, we're going to stop. I'm going to cut 1,600 calls for service off instantaneously. So you could do that if you did not engage in this. So, but you are engaging in it. You are being more proactive. That not only makes for a safer arrest profile, meaning in the month of June, if you're like, look, we're only dealing with marijuana, like all the people we pulled over or prosecuted for drugs, only marijuana. We didn't have any fentanyl. You didn't have any heroin. You don't have methamphetamines. So it's changing the profile of the drug crime, of the society crimes. And it's also the downstream effect of like a drug deal gone wrong, or like, you bring nefarious actors in to do a drug deal and then they commit another crime on their way out of town or something like that. That stuff is decreasing too. So even though it's like, well, crime in Star is going up, it's like, yeah, but Star's a way safer place to live now.
Correct. Yep. And that's what we're seeing. That's what I love the fact that another benefit that I have for Star Police Department is with the Ada County Sheriff's Office, we have the data analytics team that works. I think Chris Saunders has been on here a couple of times with you.
Yeah, he's great.
But I like that team does so much. I can call them, say, hey, I'm looking at this. Can you give me the stats on what this shows in City of Star? And they can give me that report, right? But from what we're seeing, that's where the direct effects having on proactive policing is it's driving down the more heinous crimes, the more violent crimes is going down, which I like to see. But our drug charges are going up. And we'll see what we'll see what 2024 brings and kind of keep track of it. But I feel like we're in a really good place of what we're doing, being proactive, and again, a lot of this has to do because there's a lot of agencies out in the country that they're not being supported being proactive.
Right.
Well, so far, City of Star and the state of Idaho as a whole, I think is very proactive policing is what's encouraged, and that's what's going to help keep the community safe. So your kids can ride down the road on their bikes and they can go play outside. They can go do those things. It's a quality of life is what we're looking for. And I think the more proactive we are policing wise, again, going out, making relationships with the community, when we can, we're going to try to be as nice as possible, talk to people, understand who they are. And we have deputies that stop at the Star Skate Park and they'll sit and they'll talk with those kids. They'll get on a skateboard every once in a while, ride around with them, right? And that's huge because that teaches those kids, hey, these aren't bad. Who knows what they're being taught at home or what they've learned, but they're realizing that, hey, police aren't bad people. They're here to help us. And every once in a while, we got to put our foot down because we're the police, right? We have to enforce the law. But what I really enjoy is having good quality deputies, which we have in Star and Ada County as a whole, coming out and making relationships with that community so the community can see, hey, these are good guys that we can support, and they encourage us to be proactive. They encourage us to go out and make those traffic stops. I think I do have a number for citations I put on all those reports because that was something that one of the citizens of Star was like, hey, I'd like to know how many cites you're writing. Okay, well, we'll give that to you. And we write, I think, between 50 and 75 citations in a month is what the average about is. But we're making, I can give you the numbers on that too, but we're making hundreds of traffic stops throughout that month. And so a lot of times it's us verbally counseling somebody, hey, this is why you need to slow down, right? You need to slow down. And actually studies have shown that sometimes that verbal education is better than the actual citation itself. But the other side of that too is we have a new system, and this is what's great about what the sheriff's office is doing and trying to be up their tech world. We have a new citation system called eCite, and it's an electronic citation system. But when you pull somebody over, and you give them a verbal warning, you go out back and put that in the system. Well, a week later, if we pull you over again, it'll show us, hey, on this date, this time, they're pulled over, gave a warning for this speed or whatever it might be you gave a warning for. Well, now you kind of earn that citation. Right?
That's actually super fair. Like, that's great. It's like, listen, man, come on. Like, I see this guy talk to you like a week ago. Come on, what are you doing? Right? Like, or like we've talked to you twice now, or like you have like the sob story again. It's like, all right, I hear whatever you're saying to me and you're really upset about this and you have these reasons. This is your third warning this month. Like, I got to give you a like, obviously the warnings aren't working or your life is, really, so I don't know what to tell you. Yeah.
Yep.
Man, that's wild. Speaking of technology, and being that you were like a special victims detective, right, with children, how is your relationship as a law enforcement agency changing in that so many crimes are being committed? And again, I was telling you before, I have an incredible passion for educating people about internet crimes and social media crimes and problems with children, especially like school kids, right? How is the relationship changing? Because these are crimes that, some you can't do anything about, and some are like, we have a much higher prevalence of crimes with children against children, right? So like, for instance, you have a 16-year-old, I have a friend who has a son back home, and this kid's like pretty fast move. He's not a bad kid, but he takes a picture of himself, not a great photo,
right.
and sends it to someone, and they comment like, you can't do that, right? Like, and in the state of Idaho, even if I'm a minor and I send like a nude photo of myself, first one's a misdemeanor, second one's a felony.
Correct.
And with the prevalence of technology and I don't know what it is with young dudes, they're like, this is a great idea. Right. That's not a great idea. No. That is the last photo anybody ever wants to see in the world. Like, please don't do that. But again, the nature of policing in this way, where you're counseling, you're trying to educate, you're like, it's been normalized. It's so common that young people are sending photos of themselves around. And again, even of yourself to another person, it's still against the law to do this. How is Star Police Department managing this and working towards, there's no solution, by the way,
right?
Like there's no point where you're like, got it. We stopped the last person from sending nudes. Like, good on us. Like, there's no way to ever stop this. It becomes a play of, we have to communicate with the community. We have to communicate with families and children and parents and things like that.
Yep. So there's a few things that the Star Police Department is doing, but let me talk a little bit about it's interesting because I think kids believe that this will be anonymous. I'm going to send this picture and it'll stay between the two of us. It'll be anonymous, right?
You're sending it on the internet.
Yep. Yep. Sitting on the internet. And then even if you text it to somebody else, you guarantee that person's going to show other people, right? So it was interesting because when I worked in the Elko Police Department, I was there for about 7 years. The last 3.5, 4 years, I was actually a detective, and I worked on child sex cases. Well, one of the things, I was only around in Elko County at the time, I was the only one that could download phones. We used a machine called Celebrite. And I went to the training. They sent me over. I think it was in Salt Lake where I actually went to the training. This machine, it was like a $11,000 machine. And this is right when I first started my career, we had flip phones. We didn't have the iPhone. We didn't have the smartphones, right? We still had the flip phones. Well, now we're getting in the smartphone era, and we're trying to figure out how to download these. Well, I was in front of a big group of kids, and I'm talking about this same exact topic of sharing pictures, those type of things. Well, what was interesting is I actually brought that machine in, and I set it up here, and I explained to all of them what this machine does on downloading phone, on pulling data from your phone, and that it could break your password. And at the time, Cellbrite could break almost any password I had out there. It was fantastic. And I know technology's changed, now it's a little tougher, but I put that up there, talked to all of them. I said, okay. And when I started out, I said, hey, I don't want anybody to get distracted by phones. Please bring them up. And they all set their phones up on the table in front of me. Well, then I brought this Cellbrite machine out.
Oh my God.
I said, okay, so this is what this machine does. I said, I'm just going to select a phone here. I'm going to download it. And I picked up a phone, and you could tell the kids are like, and there's a couple of them that just white face and just like, oh no. Now, obviously, I didn't download that phone.
Good for you. But that would have been a bad conversation.
Yes. But my point was to them is when you take pictures and you do stuff on that phone, as soon as you take that picture and send it, it's out there for the world to see. And I think if they have that forethought of, hey, you know what, if I take this picture and send it, it's not going to be anonymous anymore. It's not going to be, it won't be to my benefit, right? There's no way, and I get that, you know, kids will be kids, and there's hormones in high school and junior high, well, I guess middle school now. But anyways, I understand that, but they need to understand the repercussions that, I mean, we get so many, I guess, extortion cases, you could call them, of when a kid sends a photo and now that person on the line says, hey, you either send me $50 or I'm going to post this photo on your Facebook account and all of your social media accounts. And so now that kid's, and it's amazing how much money that some parents will pay for their kids to try to not get that picture out there. And it's a horrible event for that kid. It's horrible all the way around. But so the city of Star, one, we were big on education. So last year, I believe it was last year, there was a group. There's 3 people, and I think Doug Hart, who used to work for the FBI.
Yes.
He now is the chief deputy over, I think, in Canyon County, right? And then there was Officer Gomez. And then I remember, I feel bad, there was
Dr. John Condi and Nurse Kelly.
Yes, there you go. So they actually came and spoke at both Star Middle and Star Elementary. The sad part about that is Star Middle, there was probably maybe 40, 50 people there, you know. Star Elementary, we had a little bigger crowd, maybe 100, but we're really hoping to get a lot more parents to understand, educate them of, one, these phones aren't like the phones you and I grew up with, right? These phones can do a whole lot more. And to understand the social media effects. I know that Dr. Condi, he talks about the social media effects and different things of the brain of when these things.
Yeah, pediatric neurologist.
Yep.
Yeah.
Then, you know, Officer Gomez does a fantastic job explaining that it's not just, you know, Facebook or all these different social media. I mean, there's games out there that you can access that also now a predator can get on and start talking to your kid through that game, whatever it might be, or certain apps. I mean, there's always new apps coming up. But you got to be really careful because some of these apps, they'll still have access through that way. So it's hard to make sure your kids are safe using this new technology. And
No, it's not hard. It's impossible.
Right.
Like, let's be clear. If we're talking about an internet connected device, I don't care who you are. Like like carving pumpkins.
Yep.
You know, like when I was a kid, we had like the butcher knife, and it was oh my God, my thumb, you know, and it's slimy. And like the worst is like the horror that never happened. Thank God, is I was always afraid as I was pushing the knife in that my hand would slip and then it would go to the, but then they came out with those like dumb, impossible to cut yourself pumpkin knives with like the doo-doo-doo and the little smiley face. And then you're like stabbing the hell out of it. Like you just don't even care. And then you went to like another iteration where you're like, can I just get that like drywall knife saw thing? Like it's just like, so there's a little bit, it's not like, anyway, but with the nice pumpkin carving knives, the orange handle and everything, like you can't hurt yourself with that any more than you can hurt yourself with like a spoon. Right. And I think that type of consumer decision for parents is a paradigm that they think applies to technology to some degree, right? That there's a monitoring system, or there's a type of app that's safe, or and like I can get it to be like the safe pumpkin carving knife.
Yep.
No, you actually cannot.
Nope.
Like so I've done a lot of work with Officer Gomez, and one video that we worked on together is a video that somebody sent him, or we feature a video that somebody sent him, where this kid, this 6 and 7 year old, and we turn off their voices, but if you actually hear the voices, kids are like, and then I hit this and then this, and it's these kids on ABC Mouse, the most innocuous safe app you've ever seen in your life. And I know because I've seen the ABC Mouse app and messed with it. And these kids had figured out some 15-step process to get to unfiltered YouTube. Now, mind you, this is what happens. Parents think the devices are like the pumpkin knife. They're like, this only has ABC Mouse.
Right.
Ain't no way anything bad happening. And they hand it and then turn away like we're carving pumpkins. He only has that knife. They don't even have access to anything else. I don't have to worry about it. It's not going to look good. But, whatever. And then 2 days later, or a week later, or a month later, the kid has used this thing enough for hours and hours a day, and they've figured out a back door to get to unfiltered YouTube. And by the way, like YouTube absolutely has pornography on it. And if you don't believe me, like you can go check it out, right? You would agree. Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay. Fantastic. So again, that there is this misnomer, which is, hey, what can we do to make this safe? False. There is no safety.
Nope.
Like there's no world where it becomes safe.
Nope. I remember taking cases, and again, back when I was a detective, I remember taking cases of 6-year-olds that were addicted to pornography. Right. So there is no safe. There's no safe. And all they had is a tablet, like you're saying, that had only a few things on it. But sure enough, they find out a way, or somebody shows them a way, and now they're viewing all that stuff and they're addicted to it. Now we have a real big concern, a big issue.
Right.
So,
and the other thing is that people don't realize that a lot of, like, you need to redefine what social media actually is, because people think social media is an app or a series of apps, right? They're like, well, I got rid of, like, old people. They're like, I got rid of the Facebook app. It's like, nobody uses Facebook.
Yeah,
like,
no.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Nobody's doing that. But they're like, okay, well, my dad, right? I have two 16-year-old adopted sisters that go to Eagle High. And I was telling my dad about this stuff. He's like, all right, hang on a sec. And he calls me back, and he calls me back very proud. He's like, I grabbed the girls' phones and I made them delete Instagram. And he's like, I can just see he's puffing up his chest. We're on the phone, but I guarantee he's like, ah, ha, ha.
Right.
And I was like, Dad, that doesn't matter. And he's like, but I deleted them. I was like, Dad, they still have the accounts. You just deleted the app off the phone. They can go and log into their account off of any browser.
Yep.
Or if they know how to get around the monitoring system on their school computer, they can log on there. And he's like, I got to call you back again. He calls you back and he goes up to them because they were all mad about it. He's like, what you just did was a whole BS song and dance. You still have your accounts.
Right.
And they're like, yeah, I guess.
Yep.
It's like,
Yep.
So again, there's an aspect of, if I get rid of these apps, this is safe. And then there's an aspect of, okay, if I can just block these platforms, it's like, no, like, for instance, Google Docs can be used as a social media app. All you have to do is share one document with 15 other people. You guys are texting back and forth, sending videos, sending pictures. Eric Phillips out of Caldwell, I spoke with him about a month ago, and he was recounting cases where they found students using Google Meets to do really not good stuff, right? So it's like, redefine the nature of social media. If somebody has a connection to your kid, if somebody can communicate, if there's two-way communication, that's social media, right? And this could be review sites off of Google Directions or like Google Maps. You go to, like, there are these classic sites that people can go to, and then there's communication happening in the review portions of this location or whatever it is. Anything like that, like YouTube, of course, like you have people communicating in the comments, and all it takes is one person, or the Bible app. That's a classic one. Fitbit app. Fitbit boasts a 2 million person community, by the way, and you can upload progress pictures of your new shoes or your new running shorts. Like, these are all apps that are aggressively harvested by predators against children, and people hand their kids Fitbits. They hand their kids the Bible app because they think, okay, tech is bad, but I can make this tech safe, or this tech is inherently safe. And that's just not true.
Nope. It's interesting because
I'm sorry, I get very worked up over this.
Absolutely. Well, and you also, I think when it comes to social media, kids are so focused on how many friends do I have. And I remember I created a couple of fake social media accounts because with investigations, I'd use them to investigate. But I'd sit down and we'd be talking and I'd say, hey, do you know all your friends on your social media account? Oh, yes, I know them all. I said, okay, well, I'm one of your friends. Do you know who I am? And they're like, well, I don't see your name. I said, well, it's not underneath my name. And sure enough, I was one of their friends. They have no clue. And so it's just, it's a scary world out there. Yeah, I think you're 100% correct that the social media, I understand why people like it, but it caused a whole lot of fear for law enforcement. It caused a lot of fear for parents. Me with 4 kids, and I'm scared. None of my kids, well, as far as I know, none of my kids have social media accounts. And so it's just something that, it's a tough world that we're growing up. It's completely different than when you and I grew up in this world. It's a different place out there now.
Yeah. And here's like one thing, like talking to teens about this, right? Which is something that I always view as really important. Like when I was in education, parents were always blown away. Like, how is it that my kid listens to you? It was like, because I don't talk to your kid like he's 6, like you do. I talk to your kid like a real person. And like, everybody talks about that, like, get on their level. It's like, but it's not like, I actually like 16 and 17-year-olds. They're good people. They're idiots and they're impulsive, but they're good people.
Right.
But one thing that's important, at least when I, conveying the risk involved here, it's like, listen, I would have done the same thing, right? Yeah. Like, but I was not born into this world. Then I go into this long story about, I had a 486 computer in my room when I was 14. And it's like, I didn't even know that there was pornography on the internet for like 2 years because it was so hard to find. Like we didn't have the Google, right? And it's like this whole long, ridiculous story of like, 16-year-old Matt finding a naked picture on the internet. And then you have to download it, right? And so like you got the 14.4 modem, and then like my sister's friend would call it and be like, no, like it's halfway down. And then it was so hard to find, you had to like save the file because you're like, I may never find this again.
Right.
And then like my grandpa comes onto my computer and like finds the file. And the irony is, of course, I blame it on my brother who's in a different room. I blame it on my brother, but my brother's gay. So like joke was on me. Like these definitely were not his pictures. But like this whole ridiculous world of, we're no different. It's the idea that people are like kids today. It's kids today. It's not kids today. I would have been worse. Sure. I guarantee you, if you gave me a phone, I would have sent dumb pictures of myself. Like, and like, I want to believe that I wouldn't have, but I don't think I'm any better than the kids these days. Sure. What I think is that the world you and I created for them brings out the worst in them. Here's a perfect example for people wondering about this. Do you have a car growing up? Like when you're 16, what'd you have?
I had it was a 1992 Chevy 1500 pickup. Loved it.
God bless it, man.
Bought with 117,000 miles on it.
God, it's the best. I had a 1988 Champagne Honda Accord, but it was stick. Yeah. So
mine was manual as well. Yep.
Yeah. And like, I remember doing like burnouts in this thing with like the 5 horsepower it had. Right. Like but like that was me as an idiot. And like, dude, I totally blew out the clutch on it. Just because like I couldn't help but burn out in it. Sure. And it was a Honda Accord. Like I guarantee people were looking at me like, come on, bro.
Right.
But here's the thing. You and I could think about how dumb we were with our stupid like old school cars. What we're not thinking is how we're dead because our parents gave us Porsche 911s. So the world our parents made for us with transportation was one that we made inherently bad decisions with, but it was safe enough that when we made those bad decisions, we didn't die. They could have made a world where you and I are no longer here, where they're like, let's give them a Porsche. Right. And then we crash and die because we still would have made bad decisions. It's the same thing with tech, right? Like there's an inherent poor decision-making process that, again, Dr. Connie talks about. It's like, you're not going to stop a 16-year-old from being impulsive. Right. Like they're going to make bad decisions and you are not going to like educate them out of bad decisions. Because even when I was, 16 or 17 or 18, and I was doing a burnout, I cognitively could have told you. If somebody's like, is this a good idea? I'm like, no, bad idea.
Still doing it.
Right. Like I could have written essays, volumes on why what I was doing was wrong, but I did it anyway. And it's like the education aspect of taking a 16-year-old and being like, this is why you shouldn't send pictures around. They're like, all right.
Yep.
Like they said it, they know all of it, but it's, again, bringing parents back into the fold and saying, hey, this is why we need to change the world they live in, because you're not going to educate them out of bad decisions,
Nope. And the biggest difference, Matt, is when we were kids, you had to go looking for the bad pictures, right? You had to go looking for the pornography. The problem is now the pornography almost looks for you. I mean, the kids walking through, halls. I guarantee. I mean, I have 2 kids, one in high school and one in middle school, and I have my 2 other ones in elementary. But you look at this, and I guarantee when they're walking down the halls, and my son's talked about it. I mean, we walk down the halls, kids are showing the bad pictures to, hey, look what I found on my phone, right? So no longer is it we have to go out and find a magazine or find something for that. No, it's right there. It's right at your fingertips all the time. And so I agree with you that the world we live in now with these kids, I'm glad I'm not growing up in the world today, right? I'm glad I grew up in the world where it's harder to find, because that being, that self-discipline, you got to be a lot more self-disciplined as a kid today than you did when you and I were kids. Yeah, but you know what? Steph Curry actually used, where I used to live, he actually lived close by. Not like we were neighbors, but he had some compound, he had like a compound in Walnut Creek, like, 10 miles away. And he came and talked to one of the schools that I think his kids went to. And my buddy was actually there. And they were talking, some of the dads actually asked, they're like, look, man, like, how do you keep this together? And he really had a cool perspective, which he's like, listen, I can't take on the temptation of the world. Right. It's like you have people throwing themselves at you like 24 hours a day. They would do anything. And
it's like he just can't be around that. And so he surrounds himself with good people that prevent him from engaging in his more base, desires. And nobody's perfect, obviously. But I think it's it's that thing, which is like, you just shouldn't be like, you have to know that if you're tempted, like you put a big old ribeye in front of me and I'm really hungry, like I'm gonna take a bite. I mean, like, even if I know my wife's like, I have meatloaf for you at home, like come home. And this is not an analogy for anything else aside from like ribeye and meatloaf, but like I have dinner at home that my wife has lovingly made for me. And I should do the respect of like not filling up before I go home, being like, nah, I don't want it. Cause I already, but I'm going to take a bite of that ribeye. Right. It's better. Like, I can't go out to lunch with you or like, go get a drink with you at like the best ribeye place at 4:00 when I'm supposed to be eating dinner at home at 5:00. Like, you got to get ahead of that.
Right.
Right. Like, and I think, obviously as men, we know that too. Like, just, I don't put myself in weird situations where it's like, I'm going to do something dumb. Connie talks about that as well. Your frontal cortex just gets exhausted and then your limbic system like hijacks it and takes over like your lizard brain.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. I don't know how we got talking about that.
Right. Well, and I think, and that's start police department. We want to really educate not only kids, but the parents. And that's what this whole Save My Family is for, is we're hoping parents would show up. Now, there were some juveniles in the crowd that I'm glad that they were there, but parents have got to be proactive in looking at what their kids are looking at their phone and being careful what apps they have. And again, it's impossible, like you said, impossible to keep track of it. But parents need to have a better relationship with their kids. They need to be there for their kids. They need to sit down and talk with them, spend time, even if it's, I know we're busy lives. Right. And I get, especially when your kids start getting older, they start going to sports, all sorts of stuff. But take 20, 30 minutes and just sit down and talk to your kids and let them understand, like, we're pretty open in my family, talking about pornography issues and talking about, sex and those different things. Because I want them to learn from me, not from their friends, right? Right. And so when you sit down and talk to them, like, hey, when somebody shows you a bad picture, just already to make the decision that you don't want to look, right? Because it'll just lead down a bad path you don't want to get on. And so I think that's the education piece for me as a chief of police in Star is huge, making sure that the parents understand that. We have amazing parents in the city of Star. That's one thing about that Star is a big family community, right? There's a lot of big families in there. I know many of them. I live in a neighborhood that, again, all their kids come out and play. Next door neighbors, they have kids that come out and play with my kids. I go and talk to their parents. But it's just making sure you have that connection. So when that opportunity to view bad things happens, your kid already knows, no, I'm not supposed to be doing this, and already has that decision in his mind. Because it's going to happen. I mean, no matter where they're at, in school, out on the playground, wherever it might be, they're going to be tempted to by another kid or by their phone themselves to look. I mean, the ads that pop up on these social media accounts, those different things. So just, again, we encourage that education piece of make sure those parents, because we can't do it as law enforcement. There's no way we can enforce. We can try to track down suspects that are preying on kids. We just added a second person crimes detective back in October for this budget year. That now we have is Ashley Turner is one person crime detective that she focuses mainly, hers is mainly on child sex cases. And so she does a fantastic job on that. And then Casey Bryant's other detective, that's a person crimes detective, and he focuses more on the violent end of stuff like domestic violence, any type of aggravated batteries, aggravated assaults, those type of things. But with those two person crimes detectives, we encourage, and again, one of them, Casey Bryant's actually, he's not a school resource officer, right? He's a detective, because we have Alan Takuchi, who's a school resource officer in Star Middle. Mm-hmm. But the biggest fear for me is Star Elementary and keeping those kids safe. And so West Ada can't afford yet to put a school resource officer out there. So what we did is Casey Bryant is actually working out of Star Elementary. Now, he still does his cases on adult crimes. He's not focusing on juvenile crimes, right? But he's there just in case a threat comes through those doors. He's already on scene, ready to protect those kids, right? But part of that is Casey does go around and he talks to these kids, makes good relationships with them, and again, educating the parents of, hey, this is not only is potentially violence coming through those doors a threat, but that phone your kid has in your hand is also a threat as well. So make sure you're taking, taking precautions to make sure you're keeping your kids safe.
Well, let me get this right. You have an adult detective that actually just does his work and fills out paperwork and engages in policing on campus at Star Elementary.
Yes.
That is the most gangster solution I have ever heard. Like, wow. I would have never in a million years thought of that. And so he's physically there. He's not out at lunch every single day, interfacing with kids, but he's physically there in the event that something bad happens.
Yes. So we worked really close to Principal Adams, amazing principal. When this idea came up, we came up with about a year ago when we were going to add this detective. Our thoughts were, well, we'd love to have, and I think we need to work towards that, having a school resource officer in every school, especially elementary schools. We need to have somebody that's trained for that. My biggest fear by placing this, because our person crime detectives, they're busy. They got their own caseload, and so I can't have teachers pulling him away. And that was again the conversation I had with school staff. Can't be pulling him away for different juvenile problems throughout the study. They still need to call Alan Takeuchi, who's the Star Middle School SRO. He'll still come over and help, or they need to call non-emergency dispatch and have a deputy come in, and because I can't stop the caseload that's going to Casey Bryant, our detective. Right. But what I can do, and what we kind of agreed upon, hey, if you have an office space that we can give him a computer, he can do all of it. Because let's be honest, if we watch these police shows, right, and it's all action. Well, to be honest with you, in the real world, it's all typing and writing reports. It's about 5% action. The rest of it's paperwork, right? Especially for detectives. So they spend a lot of time sitting in front of a computer and making phone calls and following up on cases and writing reports. Well, he could do that time at Star Police Department, or he could do that time at Star Elementary. And if he's at Star Elementary and all of a sudden there's a threat that comes to the door, he's ready for it, right? He's already there, because we know, and just like you talked before we started this, Bill, about response time, right? Well, 2.5 minutes is the average response time for Star Police to get to a 911 call. So when you call 911, it's about 2.5 minutes, right? Our goal is under 4 minutes for the city of Star, if you look at our comprehensive plan. Now, we're well below that, and we want to keep that way because seconds matter when somebody calls 911. But 2.5 minutes from when somebody calls an active shooter or whatever it might be at a school, that's way too long. So if I can have somebody there that I can already respond, but even before the call's made, they hear the commotion, they hear what's going on, and they can make it around to stop that threat, that's even better, right? And so that was the idea behind putting Casey Bryant out there in that school. Again, it's a Band-Aid for now. Again, I'm really hoping that we as a community can figure out how to put a school resource officer in every school that's trained to work with juveniles, that's trained to be there. But at least I have a trained person that is armed, ready to address a threat if it comes through those school doors.
Chief, look, I liked Star Police Department before you came in. I like it a lot more now. God bless you. Listen, I know you're working today. This will have to be the first many. Is there anything we've missed that you want to hit?
No, I think we've hit just what we talked about before on different points. I really appreciate coming here. I'd love to. There's a lot going on. There's always new things coming up, and trying to get that information out to the community and let them know what we're trying to do. We truly, when I talk to a deputy that comes on with Star Police, the first thing I tell them, I ask them, what's the most important thing you can do as a deputy? And a lot of them give different answers. But my answer to that is being the ability to build relationships with community members. Every deputy, every detective, every person who works for Star Police, and we have 18 commissioned deputies and 1 professional staff, all of them, I want them to build good, trusting relationships with everybody that they meet. And I think that's just with that philosophy and trying to help, trying to serve what law enforcement wants to do is serve their community and keep the community safe. Building those relationships is only going to benefit and help that even be better. So I appreciate coming on here. Matt, I'd love to come back again.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll make it happen for sure. Thank you for what you're doing for the City of Star. Thanks for standing up for everybody. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
MTU Studios is the proud producer for the Ada County Sheriff Podcast, the Idaho Wildlife Federation Podcast, the State Representative Ted Hill Podcast, the Idaho State PTA Podcast, and many more. If you or your organization is thinking about starting a podcast, MTU Studios would love to help. Just check out mtustudios.com.